I met Trevor Salomon through my friend Jay Reinstein, who appeared in this blog earlier. Trevor is an activist for partners of people living with Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, meeting my wife was one of those experiences that I'll never forget. I used to run a social group, and it was by invitation only and spread by word of mouth. And we always held our get togethers at people's houses. And we always said, when the house is full, that was it. Nobody else could come in. And one day we were having our meeting and the house was full, and the doorbell rang, and it was this lady with the brightest ginger hair you'd ever seen. And we said, well, we're very sorry, you can't come in because we're full. And she said, I've travelled all the way from a business meeting in Dublin, Ireland to get here today, and I'm not going to go anywhere. You have to let me in. And we did, and that's how I met my wife. My very first encounter with Alzheimer's was my father's Alzheimer's. He was diagnosed in 1997 and he declined quite rapidly. He was already a man in his late 70s by then, and he survived about another 7 years before he passed away in a care home. Well, my wife had been completely fine until one summer's Sunday in 2009. We were having family lunch together, me, the kids and my wife, and we were talking about what we'd done the day before. We'd been out as a family. My wife was very strangely quiet until she suddenly jumped into the conversation and said, well, why didn't I come with you? And we thought it was, my wife's joke of the day, but she seriously had no recollection of being out with us the previous day. And what scared the hell out of me, and this was very deja vu, was that my father's Alzheimer's had started exactly the same way. I got a call from my mother back in 1997 one day to say, there's something wrong with Dad. He can't remember anything from the day before. And I learned later that this condition is called transient global amnesia. It can either kind of reset itself or, and it did in my wife's case, it became young onset Alzheimer's.
In a day or two, catch the next part of Yvonne's story. In our last post, we heard how Trevor Salomon's wife Yvonne experienced a memory problem.
Well, what happened after that incident on that day was that all of a sudden her memory started to be troublesome. She just couldn't remember things, short-term memory. She kept repeating herself. She suddenly started to struggle to do everyday things. She mislaid items, and then her personality started to change. She became very aggressive. Now, when I say started to, this all happened over a period of 18 months to 2 years, but it was very, very evident to me that she had something similar to my dad. And so we said she needed to get to see the doctor, and that in itself was a problem. I was quite convinced, I didn't want to be convinced, I was quite convinced she probably was beginning to show signs of some form of dementia, because the pattern was identical to my father's. Not similar, it was identical. And I was very keen that we got a diagnosis because friends started to pick up the same attributes: the loss of memory, the repetition, the change of personality, her failure to do the things that she could ordinarily do, her struggle at work. And I didn't want to speculate what it might be. I wanted to say, she's either got this or she's got that, or there's nothing wrong with her, we've had her checked out. So for me, it was an imperative to get a diagnosis. But the problem was she was in denial that she had an issue, and she thought it was me that had the problem. And that is not uncommon, I am told, with dementia.
For the last part of this story, stop back in a day or two. Yvonne was in denial about her memory problems. Her husband, Trevor Salomon, picks up the story.
We had a really good family doctor. And so I got in touch with the doctor and I said, look, I'm struggling to get my wife to come and see you. These are the signs that she has a problem. The only way I think we're going to get her to come with, because she thinks I've got the problem, is if we both come and you assess both of us. So that's what we did. We both went in to see the GP, and he assessed my wife initially with something called the mini mental state examination, which I believe is a global standard approach to assessing people's cognitive capabilities. 30 questions. And if I remember correctly, she struggled, but she got 27 right. And the doctor said, I'm a little bit concerned about you, Mrs. Salomon, because at your age, and she was just 55 at the time, you ought to get most of these right. You really should. And so he referred her to the memory clinic locally here in Harrow, and he didn't even assess me at all. So we got an appointment to go to the memory clinic, and they did some fairly rudimentary tests with her. It wasn't a consultant, it was one of the nurses, I think. And as a result of their tests, they said, we think you ought to see the consultant. He's the person that can decide whether or not you truly have a problem. And this is where it all went wrong, because they gave her an appointment, but I didn't know she'd got one. They sent her a letter, and I was abroad on business when she had the appointment. She managed to bluff her way through it, all the questions. The consultant shouldn't have seen her without me with her anyway, and the consultant discharged her as having absolutely nothing wrong with her. And at that point, as you can imagine, and I understood this, my wife said, told you there was nothing wrong with me. And it took another 2 years for us to get her back into the system. So from that day when she suddenly couldn't recollect anything from the previous 24 hours, it took 4 years to get a diagnosis.
We will publish more of Trevor and Yvonne's story on our YouTube channel later this year. Stay tuned.